Hi, I'm Michelle Hewitt.
And I'm Amanda Lockitch, and this is Disability with Possibility.
Dancing with the flames, even when I'm down. There's a power purring louder, charging for the night.
Hey there, Amanda. Who do we have with us today?
Today, we are lucky to have filmmaker, documentarian Andy Fiore, whose documentary Invisible No More we recently screened in Vancouver. And it's a pretty impactful narrative.
I think it's fair to say that the people that Andy works with and Andy's story himself mean that we need to give you a trigger warning before this. The issues covered relate to addiction, incarceration, homelessness, sexual violence. And we just want you to be aware before you start to listen. These are all real issues for real disabled people, and we don't shy away from them.
We hope you enjoy the show as much as we truly enjoyed talking to Andy.
Dancing with the flames, even when I'm down.
Today, we are very privileged and excited to have filmmaker, documentarian, advocate Andy Fiore here from Fiore Films. So you and I met, Andy, like within this past year, I think, and well, not this year, 2023, but have quickly done like a few projects together. You came in and spoke at our lunch where we had community members and members of the BC legislature, all intermingling all parties. You gave a passionate speech. You were also part of Disability Without Poverty's Shape the Benefit, Shape the CDB outreach. So I know you took part in the survey, and then you were also one of the people involved in the interviews, the peer-to-peer interviews. And for that, DWP specifically was trying to reach those quote unquote hardest to reach populations of people with disabilities, people who often don't have a voice. And you came to us from the recently incarcerated pool. And so I know you've got a lot to talk about in that. And I also just want to make sure that we get to our next project together, which is a screening of your film. But before we leap in, I'd like to just ask the question, have you always been an artist, or did advocacy sort of open the door to your artistry?
That's a really good question. I remember that, yes, I do believe I was always an artist. From an early age, my family came to Canada. I was born in Italy, and I was 2 when we arrived in Toronto. My dad became a plumber, and my mother was a babysitter, and he worked really hard, and he saved his money, and he started a couple of companies that were construction paving companies, and he did fairly well. And I was exposed to the construction industry, and at 11 years of age, because he was the president of the company, he allowed me to operate some machinery. I worked as an 11-year-old, and he would hire a lot of First Nations people because we were up in, it was called then Indian Land. But there was a bridge that you would go to Elliott Lake, and on the bridge someone had spray painted, "This is Indian Land," and you would go there, and my job was to sit at the pit in a loader. He had an asphalt plant, and then he had a pit with all the material. And so the trucks would go from the plant to the pit. It was about 1 mile. And then he'd come back, and I would just sit in a big loader waiting for the trucks. And when they came, I would load the trucks with gravel or stone. Sometimes I'd bump into the trucks, right? Because I was just learning. And when I was there, I always felt protected. A few times I saw a big moose come out of a deep pool of a lake, And it was so awesome to see that moose, but I was in like a really big loader. Another time I saw a bear, and then it just vanished. And then another time, a truck had capsized because the gravel road to the pit was so narrow, and there were beavers there was a culvert, right? And this is actually an NFB movie, which is really fascinating. But it happened to me. There was a culvert that let the water pass through that part of the roadway to the pit. And at one point, the beavers blocked it because they were creating a dam. So the roadway was completely, it was impassable. And a truck skidded out of control because it was like a hill, and it capsized. And on that day, trucks couldn't pass anymore. So I was, I think, 11 or 12, and we called in to the mechanic's shop and said, emergency. So I my mission was to take a super cab. I didn't even know how to drive it. It was an automatic. It had gears. So I just kept it in first gear. And I had to go back to the mechanic and get shovels and chains and then rush back. So I did that. And on my way back, a big raven swooped right in front of the truck, and I hit it. And I stopped. And I couldn't believe my eyes. It couldn't fly anymore, and it was bigger than me. I grabbed the raven and I threw it into the back of the pickup truck, and then it kept going. So after that, I got to the site where the truck had collapsed, fallen, and everything. And so I called one of the biggest First Nations guys, and I said, hey, this raven, he took a big rock and crushed its skull. And I was so sad. And the next day, my dad had rifles, and I knew he was going to kill the beavers. So I went back to that culvert with a bobcat, and I started to take away the beavers' work slowly, because I didn't want my dad to kill the beavers. And I got stuck. And the beavers were coming and flapping their tails out the water really hard. They were angry. And I just sat in the bobcat, and I was so scared that I had done something wrong again. That was strike two. Eventually, I didn't have any telephone or radio. I just went out there to save the beavers. And I was found that night because I was missing. And my dad was really angry with me. And so they had to pull out the bobcat. But I saved the beavers. And so I was an advocate for beavers and wildlife a long time ago.
So let's leap ahead a few years. And the advocacy kept with the wildlife and the animals, and then moved to upright human beings. And so, can you tell us about some of your filmmaking endeavors in that area?
Sure. So when I was in high school, I think I was around 17, and I gravitated towards the audiovisual program. And I was able to, they allowed me to borrow the VHS cameras and take them home and just start filming stuff. So I did that. And I would show my films in class. And sometimes the teachers would allow me to, instead of writing an essay, show a video essay. And so the teachers would, the students would watch these little video essays. And I took it to the nth degree, which was really weird. One day I decided I would try to make a documentary about the sex trade. I don't know where the idea came from. And I just don't know. But I found a guy from my class that was willing to help me. I don't remember his name. And we went downtown, and I knew where the stroll was. I don't know how. And so I started filming people, but I was hiding in the bushes. And and it was called A Necessary Evil. That was a long time ago, the documentary.
Was that the first film you made?
That was my very first documentary ever. It was called A Necessary Evil. I don't have it anymore.
And that must have set you off on a path, because I know a lot of your work has been on the downtown east side and that sort of thing. So I guess you started out early on what your subject matter, came to be. You don't seem to shy away from anything, right?
No, and that's a really good point. I never made that connection, but now that I think about it, I did end up in the downtown east side, but I don't know why. I think, actually, I remember that when I was in Ontario, I was chipping and using heroin. Chipping means you just use it every other day or on the weekends and you stop. And I was only snorting it and I got hooked, but I didn't even know I was hooked. And so it eventually escalated into intravenous drug use, right? And it was sort of moderate. It wasn't out of control yet. And then I wanted to quit. So in Ontario, I tried to get on the methadone program, but the problem was that you had to provide a urine sample that had to be witnessed live by a person. And their methods were that, like I went to every clinic. One clinic was you'd go to a washroom, they leave the door open, and a dude with a newspaper would read a newspaper while you had to go. I was like, I can't go. This won't work. Another method was you went to this place and there'd be like a little window and you'd go to the washroom, everything looked kosher, and then a window would, and this head would show. There's a head watching you. I'm like, I can't go here either. Then I went to another place and they had like a camera in the corner, 360, whatever, security camera. And I looked at the camera and I was like, I felt a little bit better, but I still couldn't go. I didn't know why I couldn't go. I could go at home. It then became clear that it was the adverse childhood experiences, that I had been sexually abused when I was a kid. I was fondled by some people, and there were problems with you're avoiding my bladder in public, and it caused a lot of problems for me, and I couldn't get off I couldn't provide a sample, because you have to provide a sample that shows you're dirty, and then you can get the dirty means that you have it in your system, and then you can get the methadone, right? Some people will fake it, and then like there's people that will actually create this thing that is like a tube, and then they just pump it and they can squirt out urine. You can buy urine on the streets, right? And provide a clean sample. I didn't want to do that. But I knew people that were doing that. And I knew people that had rigged the system. But I really wanted to get clean. I couldn't get clean. The other thing that happened was, before all of this, I rushed to my doctor, family doctor, when I was withdrawing. And I said, please, can you help me? And he said, and he saw me sweating. And I looked really in bad shape. And he said, did you drive here? I said, yeah. And he called the Ministry of Transportation and they took away my driving license.
And Andy, there's two things there, right? When you talk about, giving a sample that you have to be somebody watching you, and then you talk about you go to your family doctor and they end up calling the ministry and you lose your driving license. That talks about a level of surveillance that people who are reaching out for help, right? That, a level of surveillance that nobody else has to put up with, right? There's, it kind of flips the situation upside down, right? As to what you need to have happen, the empathy and the care that you need, as opposed to what you get.
Thank you for that clarification. It makes so much sense. And you're right. I think that the barriers that were, the obstacles were just too much for me. And that, I felt like nobody was listening to me. I think that, or I was being heard. I think that when Jim died, his final words, and Amanda knows this, were, Jim is in the film Invisible No More. Everybody can be loved if you just listen to their story, if you just take the time to listen to their story. Nobody took the time to listen to my story, or maybe I never told my story, or maybe nobody ever cared.
Well, and yet somehow you did get yourself off the drugs, and do you want to talk a little bit about Invisible No More and the film that we're going to be screening in August?
Sure. So I had a lot of legitimate anger because I ended up doing some time I shouldn't have, and that exacerbated my conditions. Like I have initially I was diagnosed with schizophrenia, which was erroneous. It was actually I have complex PTSD, which may when it's triggered may manifest in some of the symptoms that schizophrenics exhibit. But I have, because of my complex PTSD, I'm hypervigilant, and and then there's other things, depression, and so when I started off to make Invisible No More, I was self-medicating with cannabis and just sitting in a room, my bedroom. And I was clean for 16 years from heroin, but all these feelings are coming up that were I couldn't cope with. I didn't know how to cope with, and it was really difficult. And the only way to deal with it was to smoke pot and just try to chill out, right? And I got really angry because it felt like the pot was hurting me and it was making things worse. But I couldn't quit, and I couldn't quit, and I couldn't quit. And I felt that I tried to get a job. I sent my resume everywhere. I couldn't get a job. And then I was like, well, I got to get a job because, my disability, it just doesn't cover things here. And then, and then also if I do get a job while on disability, I still can't make ends meet because I'm restricted by, how much I can make. And right, it's just so insane. So I went to, just to distract myself, every May, I live in Esquimalt. There's a celebration called Buccaneer Days. It's a wonderful celebration. And they have like a parade, and then they have like a carnival. So I went to the carnival and I just watched all the rides, and it was really fun to watch all the kids having fun. And I was leaving. There was like this little fortune teller thing with an animatronic fortune teller, and then there was a slip of paper which was like someone's fortune that was unread, no one took it. So I took it, and it said to go to a park where there would be a raven or two, and that they would tell me what to do. So I went to the park, and there was nobody there. I sat on a bench, and then I saw two ravens, and they landed, and I left the bench, and I was going to go home. The ravens sat on that bench that I was sitting on, and they started cawing and talking to each other. And I was like, whoa. So I walked up to the ravens. I have the video because I had my cell phone. And they let me get really close to them, like, I don't know, 10 feet. And I started like saying, hello, hello. I just trying to talk to them. And they were just, I don't know what they were saying. And that night I had a dream, and it was like a foggy night, and I was walking through the fog, and I heard a voice say, I be the captain here. I was like, what? And then out of the misty fog came Werner Herzog with an eye patch. And I just couldn't believe my eyes. And he said, "Go forth, my friend, to the land of Toys R Us and procure for yourself the mythical Fisher-Price Pixel Vision camera." I said, "What?" "Okay." I said, "Why?" He goes, "Because only through the lens of the Pixel Vision can you truly wrought the cinematic magic." And I said, "Okay." So I had heard about the Pixel Vision, Fisher-Price, Pixel, Toys R Us, Pixel Vision camera. It's like 2000 or whatever, because I had been a filmmaker for a long time. And I think that it goes that it was made in 1987 or something, and it was released for children. And basically it had a lens, it's a really cool lens. You could walk up to a subject like 10 inches away and then walk back. Everything would be in focus. And it would be all grainy and stuff. And it looked really cool. And then it would record to like a Sony Walkman or something, right? It was made for children, but then these independent filmmakers bought one and they made some amazing films. One of them was Richard Linklater. Richard Linklater, independent filmmaker, made a movie called Slacker. He used the Pixel Vision Fisher-Price Pixel, I can't even say it. He used that camera. And some other filmmakers did too, and with a great deal of success. And I thought, okay, so I can't buy this camera because they don't sell it anymore. But that wasn't the point. You can get one on eBay, whatever. But that wasn't the point. The point was, I interpreted the point was that make a film, don't worry about the camera, because the story's more important than the camera you use, right? And then like everybody, like people on disability, hopefully they all have a camera, right? Like a cell phone with a camera. So I think that everybody's story can be heard and told, right? That's part of the idea here. And so I said, okay. And then at the time, I thought, well, it would be nice if I had some money. So I cast a wide net and I just started phoning everybody in Victoria to see. Well, first I applied for film grants and they were all unsuccessful because my title was Stories of Reintegration. And I proposed that I wanted to follow people just getting out of jail or prison and then see how they reintegrate. It was a bit much, I think, for people. And then I actually started writing. There's websites where you can get maybe pen pals with people in jail. So I just started writing to prisoners and, try to like some will say, I just want letters from men or women or whatever. I wrote to everybody that I could. And I think maybe 5 or 6 people ever wrote me back. And of those people, one person had a mother that lived in Esquimalt and was going to get released soon. But then I lost that person. It never worked out. People make promises when they're incarcerated, but when you get out, you're free. It's a different thing altogether, right? So I abandoned that. And then luckily I got a job as a support worker for survivors of traumatic brain injury. And I was an independent contractor, so I was only working on Mondays and Thursdays. And I had 5 clients. One of them was severely brain injured. Severely. Like this guy, he has metal plates in his most of his limbs. He's got like no teeth. He had implants through the ICBC claim, and one eye in his skull. He's lucky to be alive, right? And he can say maybe 25 words. So, and they've hired speech pathologists to work with him, but it never happened for him. So I think that when I met him, he had more legitimate anger than I had, and it calmed me down. It healed me. He was my soulmate. He was someone that I had to meet, and I met him, and he liked free things. He was a hoarder who liked free things. So I would bring him food in my backpack. I'd go to soup kitchens to get food for this guy, because he would when the first time I went there, the guy that trained me, he said, there's like a thing on his door, a sign that says, this room is monitored 24/7 by police. If you're not a support worker, you cannot enter this room. This man has no friends. I don't think he's even allowed to have friends. I was his only friend. He was my only friend. He felt that he knew that. I didn't have to tell him that. But he would say, friends, no. Speech, no. So one day, and he loved to play Crazy Eights. So one day we're playing Crazy Eights, and I thought, wow. And then he said, hey, I'm going to show you, like he said, he went into his bedroom and he brought out a photo album. And in that photo album, he related his story through pictures. He showed me a picture. He's 4 years old, smoking a cigarette, his father lighting it. And then he showed me a picture of when he was 6 years old, smoking crack, and his father lighting it, teaching him how to smoke crack. When he gets his check, his disability check, it's gone the next day on crack. He's my friend today. He calls me. The last time I went to see him, he had just come out of the hospital. I said, what happened? He said, dead. What do you mean? He smoked fentanyl-laced crack cocaine. And he died. He was revived at the hospital. He had his wrist, he had his band, and then he said some things. I understand what he says. But he's like a prisoner. He's living like a prisoner. He doesn't go anywhere. Everything's provided for him. He has a stack of cigarettes this high that are given to him that he smokes every day, all day long. And he's got more food than like probably, the biggest food chain. So they're providing everything for this guy. I guess in a sense they're enabling him to continue, right? And nobody's intervening, and it's a really sad story. But Mike taught me a few things. He taught me that my life isn't so bad because I can still talk. He can't talk. At 16, he was robbed of his life after a car accident. And I was robbed of my license too at about the same age, but not from a car accident. My doctors saved me from that car accident potentially happening, although I had legitimate anger with him as well. And so then I thought, well, I'm going to now make this movie, but I don't care about the camera, but I want to do it with interns. And I'm going to cast a net and see if I could find interns, because I have a lot of experience and I can teach people how to make a documentary. I learned from when I went to Ryerson Radio and Television Arts, which is now called the Metropolitan University or something. And I learned how to make documentaries from my teachers were CBC producers, and I learned from them. Like I still do it that way, but and then after that, I took 1 year of motion picture film production because I really wanted to go to film school, but the reality was I would probably get a job in radio and TV more than I would in film. So I went to radio and TV. I learned how to do it, and so I got some interns together. I went to soup kitchens. I got some food, and I just started. Just magic happened. I found people. People came to me, and I just started making this film with zero money, and that's pretty much the story.
That's the story of Invisible No More.
Part of it.
I know you're working on another project. Do you want to speak about that?
It's a project about a bird. But just to finish with the Invisible No More thing,
Yeah.
when I was became a recipient of the Courage to Come Back Award in 2013 in the mental health category, a Canadian rock star started following me by the name of Trevor Hurst, and we would sometimes message each other. And then when I finished Invisible No More, I said, "Hey, do you want to watch this thing I made?" Because he was having a film made about him transitioning into a psychiatric nurse in Manitoba, and I thought, and he said, "Okay." So he took a look at the rough cut, and then his agent emailed me and just said, "Wow." And he said, "Trevor wants to support you in any way that he can." I said, "Okay." And so they played a mini concert at the Vogue Theater, and then Gabor Mate and we kept in touch because the rate of recidivism for heroin addiction is like 1 in 4, and I think he respects me because not only did I get out of there, but I went back with a camera, made some films, and then still trying to help people. That is why he's my friend. And so I asked him when he saw the film, he said, "Beautifully filmed, dramatic stories, important." And then through his agent, he was willing to do a pro bono guest speaking thing, even though he had a previous engagement the same day, 1 hour before. He was 10 minutes late, but he was on the stage, and everyone waiting for him, and he came up. And one of the things that he said that stuck in my mind was that we need to instill trauma education globally in every institution.
I think that's a very true thing that people don't know until they don't until they know, if you know what I mean. Unless you've been through trauma, you don't know what it is that people think they can walk in somebody else's shoes, but they certainly don't know. So Amanda just mentioned you got another project coming up. What's that you're working on now?
Well, there's a couple projects, and then so one project is about a bird. That's all I can say. And the other project is about a man who is a writer and Amanda, I saw briefly with this man. He may be on season 2. This man is a very funny, very articulate. He has dyslexia. He was the poster boy for dyslexia, like literally. They used his image. He went back to school at 78, and he graduated with honors. And he's writing, like he writes screenplays, poetry. I read one of the poems to Amanda the other day, and she said, "Yeah, we'd love to have him on the podcast." And I think you guys should, because he's amazing. He has a dog named Phineas, a little dachshund. And I said, when I met him, I said, "Did you know do you know who Phineas Gage is?" And he said, "No, this man has a brain injury too." I said, "Phineas Gage was a railway worker, a crew chief in Vermont in the United States in 1848. And they were blasting rock. And during that time, this iron rod went up under his chin and up through his head. But he survived. And he was the initiation of understanding the way how complex the regions of the brain, and so it separated his frontal cortex from his limbic system, so he had no control over his emotions anymore, but he survived it. I said, "Your dog's named after Phineas Gage." And he's like, okay. So yesterday he brought Phineas here, but I have a cat, and then it didn't work out. They didn't want to be friends, but yeah, so, and then he brought me some trout and everything. And
that's incredible, because that is one of the big, key moments in disability, brain injury history, right? And here's this guy telling you that his dog's called Phineas. Like, talk about serendipity, hey? Like,
serendipity.
Serendipity.
Fortuitous. It was
fortuitous serendipity.
It was incredible. And he is my friend now. And he has a truck, So anywhere I need to go, he'll take me. And then,
Andy, you may be a filmographer, documentarian, but you are the best storyteller. I can just sit back here. My husband's a disabled and a writer as well. You and him would be talking away for hours. We went to a neurologist appointment the other week, and it came out in the notes where it said that he described my husband as a vague historian. He thinks that's wonderful. As a writer, as a storyteller, to be called a vague historian was the biggest, the biggest honor that he thought that he could be given by a neurologist. So I don't think you're a vague historian. You are absolutely. Your stories are incredible, Andy, and I'm going to be there in August as well. So I'm coming down from Kelowna with Leo, and I cannot wait to see this and to see the reaction of people that we invite, disabled people and non-disabled people, because everybody should see your work. They really should.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's so powerful that you do is by sharing those stories, you can build that level of empathy around subject matter that people might be too afraid to broach themselves, right? Or how do you reach those populations and doing it respectfully and doing it with care and safety for everyone involved? And I think you really crossed that bridge, which is really wonderful. And I guess one of my questions is probably our last question for today is what would you say to those, particularly those young people today who maybe have grown up in challenging circumstances where their dad is lighting them a cigarette at 4 years old, who know that maybe their life is more challenging than the others, but want to be an artist, make a difference, have voices heard. What would you say to those kids?
Well, it's very difficult. That's a very good question, and it's Jim told me that I needed to have a parentectomy. I didn't understand it at first, but I had to remove the influence of my parents in order to foster the growth. But when you're a child, the only option you have is to run away. And runaways often end up on the streets and being anti-authoritarians, running from being rebels and getting into trouble and committing crimes, and that leads you to jail. If this sort of thing is being done without some kind of surveillance, or which then nobody will intervene. Maybe the family will intervene, but it's more of an abduction at that point. I mean, let's say the kid lashes out, is sexually abused and runs away. The onus is on the family to make sure that kid never tells. So the kid may be abducted now. In third world countries, there are monkeys that are trained to abduct children. They'll just come in, they'll take a child and drag it away, and nobody will do anything. And the next thing you know, that child is gone forever. So pedophiles, you can sell heroin once, but you can sell a child 100,000 times for the rest of their life, right? So there needs to be some kind of, that's just the reality.
It is.
I've seen these videos and then I turned them off. I'm not on social media anymore because that was creating more and more anger. But I've seen enough to know. And I actually tweeted directly to Elon Musk one day and I said, some of these videos are violating your guidelines. He tweeted back and said, if you don't like reality, close your eyes.
Yeah, somebody that has no idea of what reality is, right? And I think, you use the word surveillance a lot again, and that comes up a lot in my research, Andy. And I think the problem that we send to see us, like for, kids and disabled people, and, it's like your friend that you were talking about, is the surveillance is in the wrong place and doing the wrong things. It's like it's that big brother surveillance, as opposed to the big brother that you want to reach, that should reach out and put a hand around the shoulder and say, how can I help you, kid? What do you need? Right. But it's not that type of thing at all. And I believe that's what we need to be looking at is, how do we look at each other? What do we see when we look at each other, right? And what do we do with what we see, right? And the judgment that comes. And anyway, get off my own soapbox. So, and Andy, this has been such an honor, such a pleasure, such an honor. I'm so grateful to you. So grateful for you opening up your heart to us every time. I know Amanda tells me the conversations. I know when I heard you speak in Victoria and the passion that comes every time. Cannot wait to see you, my friend, in August, and you can meet my Leo, who's being very quiet today. That's like becoming a running theme in this podcast. It's how much noise is my dog going to make? So your fish got to make the noise today instead of my dog.
Yeah, I also just wanted to say thank you for being here today. Thank you for participating in the screening on August 11th that we're going to do of Invisible No More at the Cinematheque. And I just, I look forward to a very long and productive continuation of our relationship. I feel very, very grateful that we were introduced.
Me too.
Well, Amanda, before I got to talk to Andy, you described him to me as a man full of heart. And that's what we got to hear today.
Absolutely. He leads with his heart, 100%. I'm a crier. I will cry at the drop of a hat. But there were so many things that just touched the core of who humanity is, I think, in this podcast. I
agree. And so many of the stories, and what a storyteller he is, that you really think that, what would I have done in that position? The 11-year-old kid who took the bobcat out to save the beavers, right? And then got stuck out there, right? And that's one of the smaller stories we heard, but I still have that in my mind.
We're really lucky not to just have had Andy on the podcast today, but to have had the opportunity to screen his truly impactful film Invisible No More this summer in Vancouver.
A great friend to us, and someone I hope we spend a lot more time with. So, Amanda, who are we going to talk to next week?
Next week, we have a gentleman named Sheldon Crocker from St. John's, Newfoundland. He is a motivational speaker, author, all around pretty impressive guy.
Well, I know one of the things that we're going to talk about a lot is Sheldon's road to resilience. And I know I'm very much looking forward to it. And I'm sure you are as well, Amanda.
Absolutely.
And I dance, dancing with the flames, even when
Disability with Possibility is made possible by many, many people. However, a few key people that we would like to thank are Christina Sheldon for her fabulous theme song, producer Dave Shumka with Kelly and Kelly, and all the funders and partners who help us do what we do.